Okay, and then let's finish up by talking about the parasympathetic nervous system. So unlike the sympathetic nervous system, the parasympathetic system is activated during periods of relaxation, during periods of resting and digesting. And what the parasympathetic system wants to do in these situations is keep body energy use as low as possible. And at the same time, directing vital maintenance activities like digesting food and eliminating feces and urine. So digestion, defecation, diuresis are all associated with the parasympathetic nervous system. And these are some parasympathetic states right here. You know, here you're at the dinner table eating, resting, and digesting. I've definitely seen some parasympathetic activity in class, and I'm sure some of you are doing some resting and digesting at home, you know, when you should have your little computer right there watching this Panopto, but that's all right. Okay, so the parasympathetic system is called the craniosacral division, okay, because the preganglionic fibers originate from the cranial division and also the cranium, the brain, and also the sacral division of the spinal cord. And also with the parasympathetic system, what's different is that instead of having a sympathetic chain ganglia that, you know, runs right down near the spinal cord, what happens with the parasympathetic system is the preganglionic neurons are super long and they travel almost all the way to the effector organ that they're going to activate. So they have really long preganglionic neurons and short postganglionic neurons. And I guess this is a comparison of that. This is the sympathetic system here. And here it's synapsing in a chain ganglia. And then that postganglionic neuron innervates the bladder and other smooth muscle there. But in the parasympathetic system, here's the sacral region of the spinal cord. You have these long preganglionic neurons that come, and they synapse with the postganglionic neurons either right on the organ or right near the organ. Now, the parasympathetic motor neurons that originate from the brain, from the cranial region, they're going to travel to their effector organs via cranial nerves, not through spinal nerves, but through cranial nerves. So let's take a look at some of these cranial nerves that have parasympathetic motor neurons running through them. One of those is cranial nerve 3, the ocular motor nerve. Now, the ocular motor nerve is going to come down here and it's going to innervate these skeletal muscles. But we know that skeletal muscles aren't part of the aren't effector organs for the parasympathetic system. So what is it? What is the parasympathetic system going to innervate with regards to the eye? Well, it's going to come down here and innervate the iris, and it's going to cause this inner circular layer to contract, which decreases the size of the pupil. And when you're resting and digesting, you don't need that much light coming into the eye. You're just looking at the food in front of your face, so you don't need much light to come through there. The facial nerve. So here's the facial nerve that comes out, and you can see it goes and extends all throughout the facial region here. And again, this is involved in skeletal muscles in the face. But the parasympathetic neurons, you know, they don't innervate skeletal muscles again, so what are they going to do? They're going to innervate the lacrimal glands here. So the facial nerve comes down, innervates the lacrimal glands, and causes the release of tears across the eye, which flush across and clean the eye, and then they're drained by this lacrimal sac there. Also, some of the salivary glands are going to be innervated by parasympathetic motor neurons traveling through the facial nerves. Stimulate saliva. And let's go back to that. That should make sense, right? Why is the parasympathetic system stimulating the salivary glands? Because it releases saliva into the mouth, and presumably you're eating food in there, and saliva has digestive enzymes, it mixes it up, does all sorts of good stuff. The glossopharyngeal nerve, cranial nerve 9, Okay, that's going to innervate another one of the salivary glands, the parotid gland. So it comes in here, it activates the parotid gland, which secretes saliva into the oral cavity. Now here we go. This is the big guy. This is the vagus nerve. This is the only cranial nerve not to serve head and neck structures. So nearly all parasympathetic motor neuron responses are going to run through the vagus nerve there. So look at all these effector organs that the vagus nerve innervates: the heart, the lungs, liver, digestive, kidney, spleen. Okay. So what do you think the vagus nerve is going to tell the heart to do? Increase heart rate or decrease? It's going to tell it to decrease. What's it going to cause? What's it going to tell the lungs to do? To constrict the bronchioles or to dilate the bronchioles? Well, we don't have much activity here, so it's going to cause them to constrict the bronchioles. Okay, and that kind of thing. Meanwhile, it's going to send a lot of blood over to the digestive tract so we can pick up nutrients. So here's the parasympathetic stimulation of the digestive tract organs. You can see the vagus nerve comes down here and innervates all parts of the digestive tract, and even part of the sacral region innervates part of the digestive tract. But what it's going to do here is it's going to stimulate smooth muscle, which increases the motility or the movement of food through the GI tract. So it's facilitating digestion. Okay? What's it going to do to the liver? Well, it's not going to cause it to release blood glucose. What it's going to do is it's going to cause it to take sugar and actually store it in the liver. So we're storing some stuff for later. Going to decrease heart rate. We're going to bronchoconstrict. It's going to cause the respiratory tract to constrict. And, now that you have this context to put it in, you can look at these parasympathetic effects and what effects they have on the different organs of the body. All right, so now let's look at the neurotransmitters of the parasympathetic nervous system. So both preganglionic and postganglionic neurons of the parasympathetic nervous system are going to release the neurotransmitter acetylcholine. So here we have our preganglionic parasympathetic neuron releasing acetylcholine. And we also have our postganglionic also releasing acetylcholine. So these are both called cholinergic fibers here. So here we have preganglionic neuron releasing acetylcholine, postganglionic neuron releasing acetylcholine. And then this just talks about the receptors for the acetylcholine. There's different subtypes of it, just like the norepinephrine, but we're not going to get into this necessarily. And I like this. This is a really good diagram here. So first of all, here we have the sympathetic system, and the sympathetic system has your preganglionic neuron, which synapses in the sympathetic ganglia, and then you have the postganglionic neuron that synapses with the effector organ. We have acetylcholine being released at the preganglionic and norepinephrine at the post. Then we have the parasympathetic. And the parasympathetic are these long preganglionic neurons here that release acetylcholine, and then the postganglionic also release acetylcholine. Also, what I want to point out there is that in both of these instances, it takes two neurons to get from the spinal cord or the brain to the effector organ. Then, of course, the adrenal gland's a little bit different here. And when we compare that to the neurons that innervate skeletal muscle, it only takes one neuron to get from the spinal cord to the skeletal muscle. So just a little comparison between the two.